Welcome to the Morning Walk with Murty Digital Stroll.
Before we extract today's legacy code, a quiet thank you to Murty over on Write.s, whose post set this whole stroll in motion.
Yeah, a massive thank you for that spark. Because, what we're looking at today through the digital prism, it's basically extracting the legacy code of Project Antaryami.
Right, exactly.
And we really need to look at the creator behind this, known as the Architect of Antaryami. They're also the mentor of the Antaryami VA Academy.
Which is a huge detail we'll get into.
Yeah. But just to set the stage for you listening right now, imagine outsourcing this massive, complex project summary to an AI assistant, only to find out that it perfectly documented all your software hacks, but completely erased the fact that your entire project was built to empower blind students.
It's wild. That is the exact blind spot we are dissecting today.
Right. So the architect had this token-heavy, really dense conversation with Claude. They were brainstorming and refining this intricate digital workflow. And because the thread got so unwieldy, they asked an AI agent named Littlebird to summarize it.
And Littlebird did exactly what LLMs do, right? It mapped out all the shiny digital tools and the platform workarounds flawlessly.
Flawlessly.
Yeah.
But it completely hallucinated the basic reality.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, it filtered out the actual soul of the project.
It's such a fascinating look at what algorithms prioritize when you just leave them to operate without boundaries. They gravitate straight toward procedural mechanics and just discard the underlying intent.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because we really need to understand the technical blueprint that Littlebird fixated on first before we can grasp what it missed.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the architect is currently migrating two distinct properties. There's Morning Walk with Murty, which is in English, and Antaryami Nadaka, which is in Telugu.
Right.
And they're auditing their distribution channels, and they found this really specific optimization using YouTube music via an RSS sync. They were rigorously testing background play on mobile devices.
This is so crucial.
It really is. That specific focus reveals a deep understanding of their target demographic. In emerging markets, specifically within India, mobile accessibility dictates consumption entirely.
Right, because smart TVs don't usually impose screen lock restrictions on audio. But mobile phones absolutely do.
Exactly. If a user is on the free tier of a platform, they often can't turn off their screen without the audio just stopping.
Which drains the battery.
Exactly. So by optimizing the RSS sync to ensure that hands-free background listening works seamlessly on the YouTube Music app, you're removing this massive friction point for an audience that relies on mobile devices for educational content.
That makes total sense. They are ensuring uniform discoverability across Spotify, YouTube, Blogger, Audio.com, all of it. But I have to admit, I was a bit confused by the Facebook Reels strategy they mapped out.
Oh, the Facebook workaround is brilliant.
Because Facebook is notoriously hostile to direct audio uploads, right?
Right.
I mean, they actively create pipeline bottlenecks for podcasters because it's a visual platform. If you just post an outbound link to YouTube, Meta's algorithm throttles your reach to keep users inside the app.
Yep, they want to keep you scrolling.
So how are they uploading a purely audio property to a visual platform without triggering Meta's spam filters? Are they just putting up a blank video screen?
No, you're touching on a critical constraint there, and their workaround is actually super elegant. They aren't just posting a blank screen or a link. They package the audio into a visual format, essentially creating an audiogram or a visually static reel.
Okay.
But the real ingenuity happens in the upload pipeline itself. They intentionally bypass several optional fields that creators are usually told they must fill out to boost engagement.
Wait, they skip the engagement tools, like what?
They skip the remixing options, they bypass audio descriptions, and most crucially, they actively avoid using Meta's AI tagging features.
Oh, wow. Here's where it gets really interesting. Because reading through the source material, by intentionally leaving those specific metadata fields blank, they are basically flying under the radar of Meta's unoriginal content shadow ban.
Exactly.
Because if they use the AI tagging on a static audiogram, the system might flag it as, low effort or repurposed material and just throttle it. But by skipping those tags, the reel slips through the pipeline, prioritized and unthrottled.
It is a total masterclass in platform psychology. And here's the catch. This level of technical maneuvering is exactly what confused the Little Bird AI agent.
Oh, right.
When Little Bird attempted to summarize this really dense workflow, the resulting output was just riddled with systemic hallucinations.
Hallucinations is putting it mildly. I mean, first of all, it misspelled the core brand as Morning Walk with Morty.
Morty.
Yeah, and it completely invented the phrase Monster Sessions to describe the architect's working hours.
Which is wild.
Right. That term literally never appeared in the source conversation with Claude. It was just injecting this narrative flavor to sound more conversational. And then it fundamentally inverted the physical reality of the hardware setup.
That hardware inversion is so revealing about how AI connects disparate data points. Little Bird claimed the architect's really powerful Asus laptop was only being used because ambient temperatures were dropping. It framed it as, like, a seasonal backup machine.
When the biological reality of the setup is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
The Asus is the heavy-lifting production PC located in the drawing room. The HP Mini is a much lower performing machine used strictly for summer browsing or, light multitasking at the office.
Right.
If a student reading that summary was trying to build their own workstation, they'd be prioritizing completely the wrong hardware. But honestly, the most terrifying system failure wasn't the hardware flip. It was the zombie workflow step.
Yes. The zombie step is a textbook example of temporal collapse and data compression. Claude actually caught this when reviewing Little Bird's document on write.s.
Because in any iterative system design, you go through versions.
Mm-hmm.
And the architect is currently running version 6.2 of their master workflow.
Right, the newest iteration.
Exactly. In the older iterations, they had this major bottleneck where they were manually adding transcripts generated from Adobe Podcast Studio. But in version 6.2, they ruthlessly pruned that manual step.
It was gone.
Completely. They shifted to using Notebook LM to transcribe the re-uploaded audio directly. That eliminated the cold start problem and kept the entire pipeline inside one notebook.
Huh.
But Little Bird didn't understand the linear progression of time.
No, because a summary basically flattens time. Unless an AI is explicitly instructed to weight chronological markers, it views all data points in a thread as equally valid.
Right.
It doesn't inherently distinguish between a brainstorming concept you discarded 3 months ago and the finalized process you implemented yesterday. So it saw the manual Adobe transcription step mentioned earlier in the log, pulled it forward, and wrote it into the permanent record as current protocol.
It's like a student who memorizes a textbook's index, but completely skips the actual lectures.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
They know the buzzwords, they know chapter titles, but they have zero understanding of the chronological progression of the ideas. So they confidently cite a disproven theory as the conclusion of the book. Let me ask you this, listening right now. How often do you let an AI summarize a thread for you, completely unaware that it just reinserted a zombie step you deliberately eliminated?
And if that flawed documentation becomes the training manual for a team, you've just institutionalized inefficiency.
Yeah.
You resurrected a dead process.
Exactly, but the hallucinations and the zombie steps are ultimately just technical glitches. The true failure here, the reason we are having this Gurukul session today, is what we're calling the AI blind spot.
The blind spot, yeah.
Because all of these workflows, the Facebook Reels bypass, the RSS background play, they only matter because of the human purpose driving them. And Little Bird completely erased that purpose on its first pass.
It missed what Claude accurately identified as the innermost thoughts and long-term plans. It captured the skeleton but completely missed the soul.
The actual heart of Gurukul 2.0. Because this isn't just a creator trying to game the algorithm for podcast downloads. The architect's true mission is training visually impaired students.
Yes.
They are actively using the DAISY platform and Sugamya Pustakaya to build accessible knowledge architectures. And this is directly tied to the architect's role at Padisvaramulu Telugu University. They're guiding the digital evolution of Telugu scholarship to make it accessible for all learners.
And the integration of those specific platforms is highly intentional. DAISY, which stands for the Digital Accessible Information System, is not just standard audio, it's a structured, navigable format.
Right.
A visually impaired user can navigate a DAISY file by chapter, section, or even page, exactly the way a sighted reader navigates a physical text. And Sugami Pustakalaya acts as the centralized online library for this accessible content in India. So the technology is serving a profound institutional mandate.
And the philosophy driving this mandate is what the architect calls paid work, not charity. I'd spent a lot of time thinking about the mechanics of this. How does teaching a student about SEO tags and Facebook upload bottlenecks translate to economic empowerment?
Well, it translates through the KPO model. So BPO, or business process outsourcing, often traps workers in low-level repetitive tasks, reading scripts or basic data entry.
Yeah, copy-paste dance.
Exactly. But KPO is knowledge process outsourcing. That requires domain expertise, analytical thinking, and strategic execution.
So by using this complex multi-platform workflow as the training ground, the students aren't just learning how to press record. They're learning prompt engineering, digital distribution strategy, algorithmic bypass techniques, and really complex metadata management.
Precisely. A visually impaired student interacting with this standardized workflow through a screen reader is developing highly specialized skills that command premium value in the digital economy. It's a designated pathway to economic sovereignty. It's a migration upgrade that moves them from relying on traditional charity models to achieving professional residency and independence.
Which really brings us to the most critical pushback of this entire digital stroll. If your core mission is the economic empowerment of blind students, and you are actively discussing accessible library platforms and KPO models in the source thread, how does an advanced LLM completely filter that out in favor of SEO metadata and Facebook upload hacks?
It comes down to how large language models parse the concept of value. These are pattern matching engines trained on the vast corpus of the internet. And on the internet, technical documentation, SEO optimization guides, software debugging threads, they occur with massive, overwhelming frequency.
So the algorithm has a mechanical bias.
Yes. It sees procedural steps and recognizes them as high-density information because that matches the bulk of its training data. Meanwhile, discussions about ethical frameworks, specialized localization, or empowering marginalized communities represent a much, much smaller fraction of internet text.
Wow. So the algorithm inherently prioritizes the how over the why.
It assumes the mechanism itself is the core deliverable. And this is the exact reason why human oversight in a KPO architecture is non-negotiable.
Yeah.
You cannot delegate the framing of your ethical intent to an entity that is statistically biased to ignore it.
That is a staggering insight, and it perfectly explains how the architect handled the correction. When Claude flagged these massive omissions, the architect didn't just ask for a quick revision.
No, they didn't.
They forced a total reconstruction of the master blueprint, and in that refined architecture, you see the technology completely bending to serve the mission. They didn't bolt the ethics onto the tech stack. The ethics dictated the tech stack.
And we see that architectural harmony most clearly in what they designated the unified metadata package.
Yes, the Pure Telugu Accept Title mandate. Now, from a purely algorithmic standpoint, making your metadata entirely Telugu could hurt your global discoverability, right?
If you aren't careful, yeah. Global search engines often struggle to appropriately surface heavily localized, non-Latin script content if it isn't structured correctly.
So to honor the Gurukul 2.0 vision of preserving Telugu scholarship, the architect mandated that the actual substance of the metadata, the episode summaries, the internal tags, the calls to action, must be crafted in natural, pure Telugu. But the titles of the content remain a hybrid blend of English and Telugu.
It's a beautifully calculated compromise. The hybrid title acts as a hook for SEO, search engine optimization, and LSO, local search optimization. It signals to the global algorithms what the content is about. But once the listener arrives, the pure Telugu metadata delivers on the cultural and educational promise of the project.
Right.
It ensures the environment remains authentic for the Telugu learners without sacrificing digital discoverability.
And to make sure this highly specific metadata strategy is scalable for the students in the VA Academy, they build out a finalized suite of 7 specific prompts. It covers everything from Gurukul-style audio overviews to Facebook explainer teasers.
Because standardization is the lifeblood of a KPO. If a visually impaired student is managing distribution across Spotify, YouTube, Blogger, and audio.com, they need absolute structural consistency.
Yeah, you can't be guessing.
Exactly. The 7 prompts remove the cognitive load of staring at a blank screen. The student can execute the strategy flawlessly because the guardrails are perfectly defined.
But speaking of cognitive load and digital friction, we have to talk about how they solved the AI voice accent problem. Because I think it highlights their entire philosophy.
Absolutely.
We have all heard AI-generated audio overviews that stumble over regional concepts or non-Western names. The cadence is off, the pronunciation is jarring. The standard industry reaction is to throw money at the problem. Creators will just buy expensive voice cloning subscriptions like 11 Labs to force the AI into localized compliance.
Which introduces significant software bloat and monthly recurring costs to a system that is supposed to be economically efficient for its students.
Exactly. So instead of buying expensive voice cloning, the architect used a remarkably elegant bypass, captions and audiograms. If the Notebook LM audio output has a slight Western accent when discussing Telugu concepts, they don't try to digitally alter the voice. They just overlay highly accurate Telugu captions on the audiogram.
Consider the multi-layered benefits of that choice.
Yeah.
It instantly solves the comprehension issue for a global audience who might struggle with the accent. It provides immediate accessibility for the hearing impaired. It reinforces literacy and reading skills for the students engaging with the material.
And it adds zero financial overhead to the KPO pipeline.
Right. It's deploying the right tool for the objective, rather than adopting the shiniest new technology just because it exists.
But they're willing to adopt cutting-edge technology when it serves the mission. Which brings us to the localized Indic OCR optical character recognition. Claude actually shared updates with the architect about tools specifically designed for this, like Sarvam Vision and Chandra OCR2, the latter of which is slated for release in March 2026. I wanted to understand why they couldn't just use standard Western OCR scanners to digitize the Telugu texts.
Well, it comes down to the structural complexity of Indic scripts.
Right.
Western alphabets are generally linear, right? Individual letters sitting next to each other sequentially from left to right. Standard OCR models are trained on this linear extraction. But Telugu is a syllabic script.
Okay.
Consonants combine with vowels to form entirely new composite shapes. You have complex ligatures and conjunct consonants that stack vertically or attach to the sides of base characters.
So a standard Western scanner looking for isolated sequential letters just fundamentally breaks down.
It outputs catastrophic gibberish.
Yeah.
You cannot preserve or digitize regional scholarship if your foundational text extraction fails at the structural level. Tools like Sarvam Vision are built natively in India from the ground up to understand the nonlinear geometric complexity of Indic scripts.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, for the Antaryami project, adopting specialized Indic OCR isn't a luxury. It is a structural necessity to make the university's knowledge accessible to the DAISY platform.
They are using highly specialized, culturally grounded AI for the massive heavy lifting of text digitization, but then utilizing simple, accessible captions to solve audio friction. It's a profoundly thoughtful deployment of resources.
It really is.
And that thoughtfulness extends all the way down to the biological reality of the actual human doing the work, which Little Bird hallucinated earlier.
The division of labor across the hardware.
Right. When the architect finally forced Little Bird to reconstruct the true narrative of the workflow, it captured the human element of the ASUS and HP mini split.
Yes.
The architect runs session 1 in the evening on the powerful ASUS machine. That is when the heavy processing happens. The Notebook LM audio generation, the Adobe Studio rendering, the dense prompt engineering.
Because the evening hours provide the cooler environment and the quieter space required for intense cognitive focus, and the ASUS provides the processing power. It is the architect's primary tool.
Right. Then session 2 occurs in the early morning or at the office, utilizing the HP Mini. That session is designated as field work. So, multitasking, handling emails, responding to social media comments, and managing the actual content distribution.
The entire system respects human limits. It acknowledges the cognitive load of the creator and maps the technical tasks to the appropriate biological energy levels throughout the day.
It's brilliant.
So if we synthesize this entire Gurukul session, the central lesson the architect of Antaryami leaves us with is a framework for authority. True digital migration, whether it's for a university, a podcast, or just a personal knowledge system, requires you to delegate the manual, repetitive friction. You must offload what Claude termed the copy-paste dance to AI agents.
You let the machine do the heavy lifting of summarization and formatting.
Yes. But you must fiercely retain absolute human authority over the architectural design and the ethical intent.
Because the moment you allow an algorithm to define the parameters of your success, it will inevitably erase your deeper purpose. You'll just be left with nothing but optimized metadata tags and platform workarounds.
Exactly.
Which brings us right back to you listening today. As you build your own digital pipelines, audit your processes, are your tools genuinely serving your legacy code? Or are they slowly, silently rewriting it to fit a more efficient algorithmic pattern?
You can outsource the labor, but you can never outsource the why.
Absolutely. But I want to leave you with a slightly different question to consider as you go about your day. We've talked about how easily current AI filters out the human soul of a project. But consider what happens in 5 or 10 years. when AI models don't just mimic the technical steps, but actively learn to simulate the ethical mission too.
Oh, wow.
If an algorithm becomes perfectly capable of imitating your values and your soul in its documentation, how will you ensure the actual humans in your system are still the ones steering the ship, rather than just becoming passengers on a fully automated ride?
That is a vital challenge for the next era of digital architecture.
It really is. Thank you so much for walking alongside us on this digital stroll today. Keep building, keep questioning, and we'll catch you next time.